Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Armchair Racers podcast. I'm Austin Balke with my co-host Kenny Kibbe. Today we have a special guest for you. The great Al Jones is with us. But without any further ado, we'll get into the real racing news. First off, Noah Gragson is going to drive for Beard Motorsports at Daytona. Kenny, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting one. I I almost had the impression that Beard was going to be kind of done when Brendan Gaughan left their stable as he retired. But cool to see them continue to compete. It sounds like there's going to be a pretty good amount of cars at Daytona this year for the 500 trying to get in. So that's exciting news because I thought the 125 races and qualifying in and people not making it where it was kind of an exciting thing to watch. And there's been a few years recently where only like one guy's not made it or everybody's made it. So um, it's exciting that the entry list seems to be growing, and I wish good luck to Noah in that 62 car. Brendan Gaughan had good success in that at times, so I think he can repeat. Another driver that, speaking of Daytona, that will be driving is David Reagan. Will be in the 36 car. Um, I think it's. I don't remember if it's listed as a front row car or if it's listed as a DGR car. But uh, David Reagan's been a great super speedway racer in his career. Got what he won at Daytona and at Talladega. So I've always liked David Reagan. He's a cool guy. Good racer on these types of tracks too. So he'll be definitely a threat if he can at least get into the race. Um, and then lastly, another car that's actually going to be full time, another front row car is Anthony Alfredo. What do you think about Anthony Alfredo in that move?
Honestly, I haven't watched him too much. I finally got into the Xfinity series, and I don't know. He didn't really impress me that much, and I certainly don't think he's as good as John Hunter Nemechek in that. So I think he'll be like 5 to 10 spots behind where John Hunter was putting that car on a weekly basis. But I don't know. I'd love for him to surprise me and prove me wrong that he's better. But we'll have to see.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I think Anthony Alfredo was I don't want to say subpar, but I think there's other guys that were better than him in and I do really like John Hunter Nemechek too. His talent level. Uh, Maybe a little early move to the Cup Series for John Hunter, but it may be a little early as well for Anthony Alfredo. We'll have to see. Front row has become, uh, statistically, they've had, I believe, their best season last year. So they're improving as an organization. They're definitely getting better. Fords have been pretty stout the past few years now. Um, Obviously, mostly with the SHR cars, but front row has made their own improvements. Um, so it'll be him and so far it's Alfredo and Chase Briscoe as the only two rookies um, for now. So I don't really see that being much of a rookie race. But we'll see. We'll see what Anthony can do. I just hope he can keep the fenders on the car. That's for a rookie in a lower tier uh, team like that. I feel like that's kind of the goal is can he keep it off the wall and stuff like that.
I'm interested to see how he does. Also, XSRX, the All Star Racing Series that's been formed by Tony Stewart, Ray Evernham, they finally released their 2021 schedule. They go into Stafford, Knoxville, Eldora, Lucas Oil Raceway, Slinger, and then the Nashville Fairground Speedway. Any tracks on that list that stand out to you, Kenny?
I was kind of surprised to see Slinger, um, high banked short track in Wisconsin. Um, Other than that, the others, pretty. They're all well known, but I'd say Slinger was a little bit of the dark horse out of the group. I expected to see some. some dirt tracks. So obviously Eldora with Tony Stewart owning that track. Um, Knoxville, another big dirt track. Kind of surprised that they're opening at Stafford, which will be pretty cool to see. We have our friends at NEP. They're right in the heart of where Stafford is. A lot of them. Um, so they'll probably have their eyes on that. Um, but yeah, I'm really excited for this series. It's the closest thing that we've had to an IROC since IROC died. Um, Obviously, it's mostly retired drivers, but still guys who know how to wheel a race car. Um, and I know I know of basically everybody that's entered, and I like most of them, so it'll be cool. And they got some cars that'll be like rotating drivers too, which will add some fun to it too.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see who they'll have in that rotating drivers list. I would certainly like to go to a couple of these, maybe Eldora and maybe Slinger, because of how weird the track is. But we'll see.
Yeah, I mean those are definitely the closest to both of us. Um, and yeah, they're gonna have two rotation cars that we know of. They really haven't been completely clear on it, but they've said they're gonna have like a rotating car of like current drivers, like a Chase Elliott or somebody like that, and then they'll have a rotating car of like a local legend or a local like track champion kind of guy. Um, which like at a place like a Slinger or a Lucas Oil or something, a driver that's there like every week that in equal equipment, that'll be really interesting to see if he can. I mean, he might be way faster than the legendary drivers coming in there. Who knows?
Good might, only time will tell. Moving on though, racing and iRacing updates.
Yeah, I got a lot to talk about in the iRacing stuff. Gosh, I don't even know where to start really. So well, on Monday, last Monday, I had an NEP uh, race in the Grand National Series. We were at Charlotte, um, and we it was a solid race for us. I decided it was a 60 lap race. You get one set of tires. I decided to pit early, like lap I don't know, something teen I think, somewhere around lap 20. With John Peters, who is last year's champion. He's second in the points now. We came up through the field. There was quite a few cautions in the second half of the race. We got up near the front, and then Ryan Libby, who is the points leader, he pitted around lap 32, and he just stormed through the field. And I got caught up in a little bit of traffic. John actually got caught up in a wreck and had to recover to finish eighth. I ended up finishing fourth, I believe it was, fourth or fifth, and Ryan Libby ended up winning that. Moving on to Thursday, we had NEP again, this time at Oxford Plains, which, if you know, Oxford Plains is just a complete circle. You're turning all the time. It was 100 laps, longest race lap-wise of the season, I believe, so far. Started fourth and finished third. Not really any passing, a lot of wrecking. Ended up turning a guy by accident, but no pitting there. Everybody just wanted track position. Um, Moving on from that, did we want to talk about the super trucks at Michigan, or I can't remember if we touched on that last week.
Pretty long ago, but basically it's the first race in the NEP Truck Series. It's like a team event, so Kenny and I are both on different teams based on a certain draft round that NEP had. Um, and yeah, kind of a shit show. It was a good time though.
Yeah, the next race is next week, right? Is next Friday, I think.
Yeah, USA International.
Yeah, haven't run a race there in a while. Last
Been a
time I
hot
ran
minute.
was probably it was BRL, I believe. And speaking of BRL, so this Friday, gosh, the BRL's we're just running in more and more series in BRL. It's starting to get pretty busy. Um, so Friday night we had the Dirt Street Stocks opening of the. This is all the opening of the new season for 2021. So we opened the Dirt Street Stocks at Eldora, which I, since they don't reach set the track state anymore, in qualifying, or throughout the whole race weekend, if you will. There's I struggle in qualifying at Eldora anymore. I tend to run the wrong line, and it cost me. I ended up qualifying 11th. You were in the top 10, weren't you?
I qualified 10th.
Well, still in the top 10. So we ran our heats, and in my heat, I started third, finished third. There was hardly any passing whatsoever.
Yeah, mine, I started third. I finished fourth just because you want to be in the top lane. When we got rolling, there was no way I could get to the top, so I just had to kind of single file in behind the other guys and finish fourth. Put me on pole for the B main. Um, like I always say, B main Belky went out there and led from flag to flag just because I got a jump on the guy in the outside row starting second, and then I just pretty much ripped a lip around the top the whole race and couldn't be caught.
Yeah, there was quite a bit of chaos that was going on. Not right behind you, it was more in the back of your heat, but there was some interesting things going on. Some new guys in the series though, and they're learning, and that was a good thing to see some new guys in the group. So then in the feature, then let's see, you would have started what 13th then, and I would have been, I think 11th. And good racing overall. I mean, there was what was there a couple cautions or something?
I think there are two or three. Yeah.
Yeah, there was three cautions. Um, I ended up making my way up to fifth from the 11th starting position, and you worked your way up to eighth. You got kind of screwed out of a that last spot or two at the end because of we had a late restart, and that actually helped me gain a spot at the end. So it was nice to see you right behind me there for part of the race. The Michigan boys representing.
Yeah, you really had to restart on the high line, unless you had an excess of talent and you could work on the bottom, but pretty much everybody was up top hitting the wall.
Yeah, so Brandon Proudfoot, um, Dirt iRacing Pro wins the first feature of the year. Led all 40 laps. We moved on to the Truck Series, the new Bootleg Racing League Truck Series. It was 80 laps at. Oh, I'm having a brain fart. Oh, no, North Wilkesboro, duh. And what do you think about that series? Like, what's your first impression?
It seems fun. We'll have to be careful of the setups because they seemed weirdly tight. Like they didn't want to turn. Like you had to crank the wheel in the beginning. As the run went on, they got like looser and tighter at the same time. I guess they became more neutral as the run went on. But we'll have to see what the setups are like.
Yeah, they get to be kind of a push loose almost.
I mean, they drove better at the end of the run than the ARCA cars did because I never had a problem with like spinning the tires and almost losing it in the trucks. So we'll have to see. But anyways, I think I finished third and you finished second in that race to J.R. Shepard.
Yeah, man, it was. I know JR was saying he wasn't driving 100%, but
He
I mean,
never does.
I, I, I drive hard, but I knew that tires were gonna need to be conserved too. So I wasn't doing anything stupid. But I was trying to push the issue on him, and it seemed like I would just ease up to him just a little bit, and then I would make a mistake. I'd slip the tires a little bit and fall back, and um, he just kept that buffer in front of me, and at the end, I ended up burning out my stuff at the very end, and cost me, and he ended up winning by 1.2 seconds. But that was a pretty decent race. 15 drivers showed up, 14 ended up racing, but that's a decent number for that series. I was wondering how much participation that was going to get, being that it was late night on Friday after the Dirt Street stocks. So we'll see where it goes. So then we move on to Saturday.
Saturday was the SCRL, formerly now it's the GTRL, just Grand Tour Racing League. We were at Daytona and the Rolex 24 layout. Um, Started second. I got passed by Chris on the opening lap, and then on the next 2 laps, I passed him. Run Matt down by 2 seconds. We fought for a long time. It was a lot of fun. And then I went into the pits to get fuel, as you do, and then I came out and I hit the pit exit wall. Still don't know how. We'll have to see, but not great.
Yeah, so from my perspective, I'm in the BMW, you guys are in the Corvettes, and I was watching you and Matt just go at it. That was a fun battle to watch. Even though you guys were getting smaller and smaller in my windshield while you were battling, it was kind of insulting. But um, I knew I was gonna have to do something when we pitted to catch up, have a shot, and I ended up I practiced pit entry, so I gained a good chunk on pit entry, and then I went short on fuel, and turns out I would have been short on fuel for the end of the race. I wouldn't have made it. I was like 2 laps short. Um, but came out of the pits and just so happened that you had spun out on pit exit right in front of me, and I had nowhere to go. I tried to stop. I got on the grass a little bit and spun sideways and slammed into Austin, and that kind of had, um, ended our runs. And then Matt ended up winning that, and then the Wolfson brothers had a good battle for that would have been second, I believe. So Chris ended up passing Ben right at the end and let him know about it. Of course, that was good fun.
Yeah, they were having a really intense battle, like driving each other up the track, down the track, using lights. Matt and I never did that once. It was a pretty clean battle for the most part. So just interesting to see. He drove a great race though. So hats off to him. It was a good win.
Where are we? Do you know where we're going next week for that race or for that league?
Okay,
Yeah, that's a pretty cool track.
I really like Okayama. The first couple corners are like you really got to know what you're doing, and you can spin out easily if you have the wrong car, but it should be a really good time.
I have better feelings about the BMW at that track. Um, Maybe not as strong as it was at Imola, but I feel like the
I
Beamer
think
might
it
be
should
good there.
benefit you due to the long corners, how they sweep, and there's some elevation changes. So it could benefit the BMW a lot more than it will the Corvette. But we'll see. I hate to badmouth the Corvette because it's usually pretty damn good race car. They did their homework, Pratt and Miller, when they made it in General Motors. So and Chevrolet. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's pretty stout. Um, but then so on Saturday evening, we have the street stocks and followed by the tour mods now, and then instead of the SK mods, and then we have the
Nan
Grand
Grash.
National. Yeah, the Nan Grational or something. Um, so we're all at North Wilkesboro for the first race of the season, and in the street stock, only 2 cautions, not too bad. It was a pretty fun, clean race. I noticed something too, Austin. You had the fastest lap of the race with a 20.131.
Well, I didn't intend to go as hard as I could for the first like 20 laps, but Justin Morton was really putting it to me.
Yep. So you started on pole. You were leading for a while, and Justin Morton started second. Obviously, he was right on your tail. You guys were kind of running away from the field as guys like myself and JR were trying to get through the field. And I think JR had just gotten to like what third I think it was.
Yeah,
Third.
JR was third. The caution came out, and then we restarted. I pulled away. JR raced Justin for a bit, but once JR got past Justin, he just wrapped the bottom so well. I had no chance of holding him off.
Yeah, it was going to be interesting if the caution didn't come out because he had a little bit of a gap to make up, and I know Justin was not going to just pull over for him to get past, which could have maybe let you run away a little bit more. If that would have all stayed green, it would have been an interesting battle to the finish. I was a little bit behind JR. I was like maybe a car or two behind him. So I followed him through, and that restart did help me gain some more spots. I ended up getting P2 out of it. James Lowe ended up P3, and then Austin, you ended up P4. Adam Shane with a good run in P5. Justin Morton ended up hitting the grass out of turn 2 with still a few laps left and really killed his momentum, and he lost a bunch of spots. He ended up P7, but so that means he'll be on the front row next week, so he'll be dangerous next week. I expect him to get the early lead.
Moving then on to the tour mods. First racing those, they seem like a lot of fun. They have a lot more horsepower, and those things haul down the straightaways. So it's a pretty fun race.
Yeah, I love those. Those tour mods are really cool. I mean, you're just ripping down the front stretch in like you do have to manage the throttle, but the cool thing about those modifieds is that they have so much like downforce for what they are, and so you can still go into the corners deep. It's kind of a weird sensation because coming off the corner, you know, you kind of got to manage your throttle. Then once you're going, man, you can dive into the corner so deep if you want. Um, and just the rate of acceleration is just so much, you know, faster obviously than the tour mods or than the SK mods. And it makes for a good time. So again, we were in North Wilkesboro, and that race ended up being kind of weird, I suppose. So I was in third at the time. James Lowe was in second. JR was in first. And we all found that we were all going to run out of fuel. Where were you at that time? You were up towards the front too, weren't you?
I was fifth.
Yeah, so this is like what? Somewhere around like 20 to go, maybe? 10 to 20 to go. We all start freaking out because we're not going to make it. And then JR dives to the pit lane under green. A few other people did too. Were you one of the ones who pitted under green?
Yeah, I was able to go 2 laps longer than JR was on fuel, but I think 1 lap uh, shorter than you guys.
So I had like maybe 1 or 2 laps left, and I figured that people were going to start crashing when people were going to start pitting because the pit lane under green is really tricky there with it being a short track and people being all over each other. So sure enough, there was a caution was in the entrance to pit road, so I pushed the clutch in and coasted, made it to pit lane with James. James was now the leader, and that caught a bunch of you guys a lap down, Austin and JR. Brian was a lap down, I think. Um, so that messed up the whole order. So now we got like I don't know 7, 8 drivers left on the lead lap, and I end up in like I don't know sixth or something, sixth or eighth, and at the front you got Steven Spees, Mike Allen, Joe Segala, Jeff Harden, and Todd Liston, and I think Robbie Robinson was up in the front too, and then James and myself, and we were going to be super aggressive to get through the field, and had a restart, and I think Joe Segala got wrecked in 3 and 4, and James made a really cool like dodge to miss him and save his car. He kind of spun down to the bottom of the track, but he kept it going straight. Then we had a one final restart, and he was the row in front of me. I think I would have been sixth, and he would have been fourth. And he tried to kind of make it 3 wide right on the start, and then kind of pulled out of it, and I just shot to the outside, past him and Jeffrey Harden. So now I was in third, and then we come around, and it was the checkered flag. So we ran out of time with what we had. We had probably like what 3 to 5 laps left or something like that. We completed 94 laps. So we had 6 laps left, which would have been probably enough time for me to at least get second. So I was a little bit disappointed in that. I'm interested to know your perspective from that whole mess. You know, basically from the time of the caution to the end of the race.
Man, it was an absolute shit show. Because the problem was, we got the caution, we all lined back up, but I don't know what iRacing was thinking because they lined like one lap down people up behind like people that were like two, three, four, 5 laps down. And it was like, okay, well, who gets out of the way and win? And why are you guys still in the way? So we go green, and like the person in front of me, Brennan, he's usually pretty good about getting out of the way, like not going all the way up the track, but like giving you a lane to get by him. I thought he was giving me a lane, and then he couldn't go any higher because Ryan Sedeker pulled up to his outside. So it's just a shit show. And those cars, you can't really race close to each other because they're all that Cody.
So in the end, Steven Spies grabs the win. I can't remember if he won. Did he win one other time in the modifieds? I think he did.
I think that was his first modified win. I feel like the dirt person that won before would have been Mike Redding.
Yeah, maybe. So he gets the win. Mike Allen gets second. I end up third. Jeff Harden fourth. Todd Liston fifth. It's a very different finishing order. James Lowe sixth. Robbie Robinson seventh. Joe Segala eighth. Notably, outside the invert, you in ninth. Austin Belke. J.R. Shepard in 10th. Brian Dean in 12th. Justin Morton 13th. Donnie Moore 14th. Mark Herzog was way down 22nd. He was 19 laps down. So, some
The
fast,
cream will
fast
rise.
guys. Yeah, some fast, fast guys did not make it into the top 8. And that will be interesting to see them come through the field. I wish we would have had them last 6 laps.
It was weird too because we had more time left. Like it was only 9:35 when we ran out of time, and we had like 10 more minutes. Because usually, if that race goes long, uh, it's like we get out of there and we have to immediately jump in the Grand National practice if we want to take advantage of the entire 20-minute practice.
Yeah, I think there needs to be some work done with the intermissions and the time lengths of the servers and stuff. But
Yeah, Inlow's working. I mean, he's human too. He's not perfect, and certainly, I think he's taken a step in the right direction because we used to just go like 2.5, 3 hours back to back to back if we had cautions in the first 2 series. So I really like the way the direction he's taken it and spacing out, giving us some intermissions. I just wish that I don't know. Grass always greener on the other side, so it's a hard position for him to be in.
yeah, I have to figure out a way to entertain my few viewers when we have an intermission. So I've been just looking at the replays like this past week, but it ended up not too bad. So then we move on lastly to the Grand National race at North Wilkesboro. Last season here, we only had like, I want to say a couple cautions, if that. Really solid race. This week, not so much. That modified race, by the way, had 7 cautions in 100 laps. Not great. BRL Grand National race had 11 cautions in 100 laps. We just never could get going. Multiple drivers had self spins, and you had guys up in front like Joe Segala led some laps, which was good to see. He led 15 laps. Then James Lowe took the lead from him. And then on a restart, JR passed him on the outside and never looked back. Ended up leading 62 laps to the checkered. But yeah, that race was kind of a struggle for the whole group.
Yeah, the setup was really weird. It was interested to see a lot of people self-spinning into the corners and out of two, because turn four is really the one that I would assume would catch most people out, and it did. It caught me out twice, caught a couple other drivers out a couple times, just because the way you go over the hump, and if your wheel is still turned, when you go over that hump too much, you'll spin out. So it just, I don't know, hard knock life. Definitely a humbling sport.
Oh, for sure. So then, um, going through, we had some drivers like get up into the top 5 um, that weren't probably expecting to be there. You got Adam Gable ended up 5th, which was a great run for him, especially starting. He started 21st, and he had his own kind of problems throughout the race. Was involved in a few incidents, but he ended up making his way up to 5th. Ruben Altus 6th, Mark Herzog 7th. He started 15th. Todd List ended up getting into the top 8. He was 8th after after starting 20th. solid run for him. But yeah, guys like Brian Dean had a really struggling time at it this week. Just could not avoid a lot of the wrecks that happened. Chris Wolfson showed some bright spots. Was up in the top 5 or 6 for a little while. You were up in the top 5 or 6, so you were actually ahead of me, I think, um, at
I
the
was third
beginning.
this time.
Yeah,
Pitty caught up to me.
and then Donnie had some struggles. Kurt Smith, I felt so bad for him. He was starting up front and 2 laps in, self-spun and didn't return to the track. Um,
Yeah, before it was cool. Luckily, he didn't do it twice.
yeah. Oh, Adam gave me props for saying his last name correct in chat. Finally, I need to call him Gable, not Gebel. So we'll have to remember. I'll have to remember that on Fridays and Saturdays when he's racing with us and I'm announcing for our little league. But anyways, would you like to bring on our guest, Austin?
I would love to. Special guy. We don't know much about Al as we do some of our other guests, but we do know he has two names before Al. The first being the second being the great. So, ladies and gentlemen, the great Al Jones. How you doing, Al?
Feeling great.
That's good. We love
Way
happy.
enough.
Yeah, it was great to have you on. I, to be honest with you, we didn't really have you like on our list at least as far as like having you as like a guest having right now. But uh, we were chatting in Discord and I was like, holy crap, why don't we just ask Al to do the podcast? And it all worked
I
out.
get, I get it. I wasn't a first choice. It was a damn it. We're down to Al. Let's
Yeah.
get him on this week.
Yep. It's well, I mean, you made the top 10. It's episode 7, and you're the 6th guest. So it's a solid run for you. Not quite top 5, but solid run.
No, I'm happy with that. My goal here is just to get more streams than Zane. That's what I'm banking on. I'm hoping we can reel in more listeners and put Zane in his proper place because I understand he's up near the top as far as most listened to shows since you guys started this podcast.
Got a pretty big head, so it'd be cool to take him down a notch.
Yeah, you'll have that on your bigger jobs.
Indeed, you will. So, Al Jones, want to start first by asking you how did you kind of get into racing as a sport? Like, did you uh, did it start as a childhood thing, or kind of get into it later on in life, or
Well, as a kid, I had an older brother named Bill who was a big gearhead, and he raced motocross. And he also had cars and was always tinkering on things like go karts and mini bikes and stuff around the house. And he was kind of like my role model into I guess my entry into the gearhead lifestyle. So when I was a little kid, I have a situation where I'm the youngest of my family. And by the time I was born, my brothers were all sort of entering their teenage years. So by the time I was, 4 or 5 years old, they were all, driving cars and, motorcycles and stuff like that. So it was kind of like, uh, that I was surrounded by that kind of stuff at a young age. So that's really what got me into it. But in particular, my brother Bill, who raced motocross, he was kind of like my hero, right?
so were you first interested in the two-wheel stuff first before the four-wheel stuff?
I would say so, mainly because I liked, watching him and, even getting to see him just like ride around the yard and stuff when we were kids. It was, like a mind blowing kind of thing. And then eventually I got into when I was younger, I raced BMX bikes and I never got to race motocross myself, but we always had, mini bikes and three wheelers and stuff like that. So while I didn't compete with that, I was always, riding with friends and stuff. So.
How old was he when you started idolizing him? I guess did you have a lot of brothers that were older than you?
Well, I had 4 brothers. And he was the one that was kind of like, uh, in the cars and stuff. The other ones were, but not as much, not in any kind of competition level or anything like that. They just had their cars for, driving to school and stuff like that. But Bill was the one that like I said, he raced motocross and in particular hair scrambles. That was his thing. Um, but yeah, so they were, 16, 17, 18 years old when I was, 4, 5, 6 years old. Um, so I was in that kind of impressionable age, and, uh, they were my big brothers. So I wanted to do everything that they did. Right.
So when did the interest in like something four wheel come in, like car racing or whatever?
Well, I always kind of like cars. Even as a kid, I mean, I had, tons of toy cars and stuff like that, like we all do. But as I became a teenager, I started to get into cars. I had friends that were, uh, again, not necessarily competing or racing, but we had cars and we'd work on them. And I never had necessarily nice cars, so I had to learn how to work on them and keep them on the road myself, because I was always driving some sort of jalopy. But as I got older, I had a chance to, I would say, once I got into like my late 20s, actually, I had an opportunity to go autocrossing with a friend, and that was my introduction into really, uh, rather than just as a spectator as far as racing goes, a chance to actually participate on a grassroots level. And that's kind of what sparked my interest, really.
So you mentioned cars and working on them, jalopies. What was your first car?
My very first car was a 1983 Mazda RX-7.
Was it a
Ah,
nice RX-7?
It was a wrecked RX-7. What had happened is one of my dad's friends had an older son who had gone off to college and left a wrecked RX-7 in the yard back home. And he told my dad, "Hey, if your son wants to come down and get it, it's all his. I'll sign the title over to you." So I grabbed one of my friends who his dad was a mechanic, actually, and we went down and got it started and running, and we drove it over to their house. And then I spent the next couple of months learning how to work on it, going to junkyards and buying the parts that I needed to put it back together. So I got it running. It was my first car. I drove it for 37 days and then I wrecked it.
so what happened to it to wreck it the first time, and then what did you do to it?
I don't know exactly what the original kid did to wreck it. All I know is it had front end damage where um, Mazda RX-7s had pop up headlights, the first generation, and I know the headlights were torn off and the hood was pushed down, and so he obviously had rear ended something. So what I did is I was driving on the Pennsylvania Turnpike in a rainstorm, and there was a tractor trailer that had jackknifed, and traffic came to a stop, and I tried to stop, and I drove right under the back of a tractor trailer and did the exact same damage that I had just repaired.
Wow, that is a coincidence for sure.
Yeah, I think
That's crazy.
that car might have been cursed. I don't know, but yeah. So rather than go through the struggle of trying to replace it and all that stuff, we just sold it off, and then I inherited. My dad had got a new car, so I took it over his. It was a 1982 Chevy Blazer, like a full size. What was it, the K5 Blazer or whatever
Those
it
were
Oh,
was?
nice.
bad ass.
Yes.
Yes. So that was my car all through high school and college. I think by the time I got rid of it, it had 240,000 miles on it on the original 305, which, if you know anything about those engines, they didn't necessarily go to 200 miles, 200,000 miles. So I got lucky with that one.
You know
That's incredible.
they never were like for performance, but the I think 305s are a little bit underrated. Like I always get overshadowed by the 350.
Yeah. In that car in particular, it just had no guts at all because it was, that big heavy Blazer. So, which was fine for me because I'm sure I didn't need any help going faster at that age.
Oh, those Blazers, they're so cool though.
Oh yeah, if I could find one in any kind of decent shape at this point, I would buy one as a project. But they, especially here in the Rust Belt, they all just rotted out. So
Oh yeah, same here in Michigan. Um, so through this time from from birth to like age, in your 20s, did you have any interest in like motorsports on television or anything like like NASCAR or IndyCar, IMSA, any of that?
yeah, I've always kind of I would say I was more attracted to road racing and endurance racing. So, anytime I could watch something like I was into the Trans Am series, which was kind of bigger back then and on TV more often. I used to like to watch the NASCAR races when they do road races, and like Boris said, was always one of my favorite drivers because he would come in from like, the IMSA cars and stuff. He was kind of like the road racing ringer that they would bring in, and I always kind of like to watch him race in NASCAR. Um, but yeah, I mean, what's funny is when I was much younger, like you didn't have the options on TV like you do now, right? Like now, any weekend we could sit down and watch, our choice of like 15 different things, and if it's not on TV, it's on cable, and if it's not on cable, we can subscribe to a streaming package, and it's just a great time if you're a race fan and you want to watch stuff. Back then, we had three networks, so you just kind of had to watch what was on.
Yeah, so did you have you had a Boris said as like so you were a said head is what we would have called you.
Probably. I mean, I don't want to make it sound like I had the guy's poster on my wall or anything like that. But like he's just one of the names that I always remembered. He had that crazy hair, like um, like back in like the '90s when he was really kind of. I mean, he's still around. I guess he's doing race announcing and stuff now, but. Back when he was, driving, he had like this crazy, like afro kind of hair. He'd like pull off his helmet and his hair would, like sideshow Bob out of it. It was kind of funny.
Yeah, and that Trans Am had some really stout drivers at that time, like through the late '80s, early '90s. I mean, you had Scott Pruitt, Scott Sharp, Boris Said, Tommy Kendall. And the cars were so cool too, and they had made a lot of power.
I think that's really what drew me in too, is the cars. I mean, they were like, it was like a car that you would see at a dealership, right? But then they'd add these like huge fender flares and spoilers and splitters, and it just made them look, you know, like something out of a like a comic book or something. They were, and and the noise and the wide tires. Yeah, it was kind of like visually, it was a very appealing race series to watch.
Yeah, they looked fast going slow.
Exactly, and I
Yes.
think I think a lot of race cars now, everything's so designed in a wind tunnel. I think it's kind of taken away from a little bit of that.
That's interesting. That's maybe a philosophy that maybe we should go back to is, obviously they were probably trying to push the limits of speed and everything, but the technology just kind of wasn't there yet. We're still learning. Nowadays, everything's so pushed to the limit, and I think it kind of takes away from that fun factor a little bit at times. It's not always necessary to be going as fast as you possibly can, as long as the racing's good.
Well, one of the things I think my interest in NASCAR has definitely waned. I'm totally a casual NASCAR guy. Like I will, if I'm not doing anything and it's on, I'll throw the race on, but I don't go out of my way to watch a race anymore. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that it's basically like everybody's driving like the same car, right? And they just throw stickers on it to well, this one's going to look like a Camaro and this one's going to look like a Camry.
Right. Um, was there ever a time where you were like a little bit more into NASCAR?
Um, I would say that I've always kind of been casual to it. I would say probably like the late 80s and early 90s was kind of like the peak for me, and that was still the time when you could like watch a race and tell what the car was, but what the manufacturer was just by looking at the car, right? Like you had um the Chevys and GM products had a certain look, the Fords had a certain look. When they started kind of like uh giving everything kind of like the same aero package, and it was just the cars kind of became a blob, um that with different manufacturers stickers on it. That's kind of when I sort of became more casual with it, I would say.
So back in those days, I guess. I mean, obviously you were a set head. Did you have a favorite regular driver?
I would Rusty Wallace is a guy that I think I used to cheer for quite a bit. I I wouldn't even necessarily know why. Probably something like, I like the car that he drove, like one of those kind of things.
He had a pretty, big head of curly hair too. Maybe that's got something to do with it.
I'm just jealous of these guys that had these big curly hair. Yeah, that's it.
So going forward, so you got into autocross. Um, did you did anything stem from that, or like did you is that what you've competed in, or is there anything else?
Well, actually, it's funny. I did autocross for the very first time as a friend. A friend of mine had an extra car. He had a Suzuki Swift GT. And I don't even know if you guys would remember those, but there was these tiny little kind of like performance hatchbacks that were made in the late 80s up through the early 90s. And he had one specifically set up for autocross. And he had another car too. He had a Porsche, a 914, and he was taking his Porsche out, and he's like, "Hey, if you want to run the Swift today, why don't you come with me?" And I was like, "Sure." And I hadn't even driven a stick shift transmission in the longest time because every car I had had since my Mazda had been automatic. So I went out and kind of struggled just to get you know bring myself up to being able to drive a manual again. But I ended up having a really fun time that day, and I was like, I think I could kind of get into this. And not long after that, about a year later, I had an opportunity to do a track day. I was working at a radio station, and one of our salespeople said, "Hey, one of our clients is Road America. Would any of the anybody on the staff be interested in going down and doing a track day for free?" Uh, and then talking about it on air. And I was like, "Yeah, I'll do that." So I went down, and at the time they had the Skip Barber Racing School there, and we got to do a track day with them. And yeah, that was that kind of probably ignited my interest as going from rather than just watching it on TV to, hey, this is something that I can maybe participate in and find ways to get on track and do this. And that's kind of one of the things. And and on another level, even before that, something I kind of glanced over is I used to be heavily competitive into RC car racing, which is it's basically toy cars around a little track, but at the same time, all of the setup and all of the racing and all of the um you know as far as like your lines and that kind of stuff, that's all part of that as well. So I was able to take some of the stuff that I had applied from years and years of racing RC cars and then do it in a real car. And I'm like, hey, this kind of makes sense now. Now I know why this works and why you brake here and why you accelerate here. And I was able to kind of put that together when I was doing the track day. And um, yeah, since then I've looked for opportunities to try to get into a real car when I can. So
So what track was that track day at?
that was at Road America in Elkhart Lake.
Oh wow, what that's a pretty iconic place to go for your first track day.
Yeah, and I'm not sure I appreciated it at the time. I was aware, obviously, of the track because Kart and Indy and whatever, all these different series kind of ran there at the time. And so I'd seen it on TV, and then I got there, and kind of, I think I was sort of overwhelmed with just the whole, uh, the whole driving thing rather than the where I was doing it. So afterwards, I can kind of look back and go, yeah, that was a lot of fun to do it there. I hope I can go back and actually, race and wheel to wheel there at some time. But yeah, as far as taking a track day there, it was a blast.
Now, for like when you were doing autocross and doing RC, did that require much traveling?
I never really competed in autocross other than, you know, just to do a couple of local events now and then. So, um, no, there was really, autocross is set up. I guess if you get into a circuit and uh, I have some friends that they do like the SCCA solo cross stuff, so they will travel to events and do some things like that. For me, it was never more than go to the local place at like the swimming pool parking lot and do it. So, just with local groups and so it never required more than a 20-minute drive from my house.
So at some point, you transition from, well, maybe you still do some stuff like that, but at some point, you get interested in the 24 hours of lemons. Explain what that is and like how you got started in that.
So the basis of 24 hours of lemons, obviously it's a play on words for the 24 hours of Le Mans, and it's basically lemon racing. They have a set limit of $500 is what your car can cost. So you go out and you find some sort of crap can, on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace, and you turn that into a race car and you bring it to one of their events and you compete. It's kind of like a multi-class racing. You go through an inspection and they determine based on what type of car you have and how many races you've done and that kind of thing, and they will put you either in A, B, or C class, and then you race head-to-head endurance racing with
Oh, yeah.
uh, all these other guys who have done the same thing. So,
Thanks for the follow,
and the $500
dog food.
car thing is sort of uh, it's kind of like a more or less a guide. Your car actually ends up costing much more than that because the car itself is supposed to be $500, but then you have to put a roll cage in it. You have to put a racing seat. You have to put safety equipment. They don't count your tires and brakes against the $500 because they want you to have um, decent stuff for safety reasons. So yeah, at the end of the day, your car probably ends up costing closer to a couple $1,000s after you do all the work to it. Um, but the spirit of it is you take these crappy cars and you race them.
Well, that's still I mean, as far as racing goes, that's still a relatively cheap way to get into racing, especially on roadside, I would think.
Yeah, I would definitely think it is the easiest and cheapest way for anyone, especially if you don't have any kind of experience, right? Like, most of the guys, even like if you go to an SCCA event, which is supposed to be kind of like an amateur event, a lot of those guys have been racing karts and they've been racing various other forms of motorsports before they ever get to that. With lemons, there are literally guys who have never driven on a racetrack before doing their first race, and it's combined with guys who have been racing lemons for 15 years at this point or whatever. So you may have a guy who's done 100 races lined up right next to a guy the very first time he's ever been in a race car.
Which I assume could be possibly frightening.
It is, and you often hear guys that are involved in it refer to the spirit of lemons, and the spirit of lemons is you kind of want to be you kind of want to make things better for the guy who is its first race. You don't want to take things too seriously. Um, but at the same time, you have to be serious about the driving, right? Because it's dangerous. You're in a race car. It doesn't matter if it's a 1992 Corolla or a NASCAR. you can get killed in either one. So they take things very seriously from a safety standpoint. They want to make sure that people are driving safe, that the cars are safe. But at the end of the day, it's kind of more about having fun. And mistakes are going to happen, especially when you have a bunch of amateurs like that. But the idea is to create an environment that's sort of welcoming the new guys, competitive enough for the guys who are, that have done it a few times, and safe for everybody.
So what have you driven in the 24 Hours of Lemons yourself?
So I did one race, um, and I was in a Mazda Miata. We went basically a one of my teammates. We were but well, we're actually it's a very long story. We're actually building our second car now, but our team hasn't been in a race yet. Uh, so what happened was one of my teammates invited me to race with his family, who also races. They have a prepared Mazda Miata, and they needed an extra driver. So we went out to Chicago a couple of years ago to race with them, and then just as it came time for my stint, the car broke. So we spent the entire time repairing the car. That would have been my track time. Um, on the first day, and then the second day I got out for 20 minutes and the car broke again. So I have 20 minutes of track time, um, which is just great.
We got a guy in the chat named Kurtz006 says Miata, the answer to every auto question.
It is. It's just one of those cars that's like uh it's just I don't know, it's like the comfortable blanket of road racing cars.
Yeah, I definitely
So
have
what do
to
you
be a
guys
hoot to drive.
What was that?
Oh, I was just saying they got to be a hoot to drive. I actually have a couple friends who are interested. They're inquiring on trying to buy one for themselves.
That brings up a good point. If you're someone that is interested in doing um any of these sort of Lemons isn't the only one. There's some other leagues out there like Champ Car. There's a series called Lucky Dog. There's um, another one kind of like I think AER, American Endurance Racing. So there's a couple of these Lemons type leagues around that do this and go to different tracks around the country. But my suggestion would be first to attend one of the races and kind of walk around in the pits and talk to people and see what's up. And then maybe not build a car for your first time, buy one that's already been built and then work on it. Because the build part really takes so much time and money. Like I said, we've been working on our current car. It's just about 2 years now. And we're hoping to have it ready for April for a race here in Pittsburgh. So it takes a while to bring everything together, especially when you're looking at a car that you buy for $500. It's going to need a ton of work anyway, and to try to make it last an entire weekend, you want to make sure that everything's good on it, right? So it's going through the entire brake system and the cooling system and the fuel system and all these things to make sure it works.
So what kind of car are you guys building now?
Oddly enough, it is a first gen Mazda RX-7. So I'm kind of back to my very first car. Only this time, it's we're building it to race. So
Hopefully not cursed.
hopefully, I won't drive it under any tractor trailers out on the track. Yeah, that's what we're looking for.
So what? If you guys race in Pittsburgh, what is that your home racetrack there that you would be competing at?
It's called Pit Race or Pittsburgh International Raceway. It used to be called Beaver Run years ago, a new ownership group. Actually, the guy who owns VIR purchased uh, is one of the main investors or owners, and they changed the name to Pit Race a couple years back and put a lot of improvement into it. So it's a really nice facility. They have a go-kart track there. They've got a big autocross area, and then they have I think it's just around a 2 mile road course.
Ah, very cool. You love to see it when people buy up old properties and pour money back into them to kind of rejuvenate the sport in different areas.
Yeah, I think the original ownership group had good intentions, but it kind of became one of those things where like they built it and they got to a point where it was like, okay, this is good enough, and they kind of treated it as their own little like kind of club, right? And then after a while, they sold it off, and this new ownership group came in, and they kind of made it. Uh, kind of finished off all the other stuff that the other people had started. They paved the paddocks and put in some garages and finished off an extension of the track that had been started but never completed. And yeah, the places are really great now.
So this group that you got building, your current Lemons car, how many guys is it, counting yourself?
I believe there's 5 of us all together, and really what happened is originally we had a 300D Mercedes-Benz wagon, okay, diesel powered that we converted to run on cooking oil. So we were going to run that as our first Lemons car. And we built it, got it running, got it caged, and then we made the tragic mistake of leaving water in the cooling system, and it froze and it cracked the block.
Oh, jeez.
So yeah, which is just a terrible mistake to make, right? Especially after we spent, close to $2,000 to put the roll cage in it. So we scrambled to try to find another engine to put in it, and we found one, but we can never get it running just right. Like it did not run like the old engine did. It has some kind of we believe the issues in the fuel pump or the fuel injector. We're not sure. We just know that sometimes it runs and sometimes it just doesn't want to start. And it kind of became one of those things where we're doing all this work. The car still needed a bunch of stuff to get done before we could race it. At this point, we'd been 2 years in on it. And then I had an opportunity. I wanted to buy a first gen Mazda RX-7 just for myself as a project car. And I went and looked at one, and the guy had 2 of them. And I had asked him, well, I'm like, well, what's the situation with both of these cars? And he gave me a price for both of them. So I bought them both. One was kind of a parts car, and the other one was, the project car. So I got the project car together, and then we decided to take the parts car and make it a race car. So I was able to get it running, and it still needs a little bit of work. Some the cooling system has a few leaks that we have to repair, and I just went through the fuel system, and the gas tank had, anytime you deal with cars that have been sitting forever, there's always things like, the gas tank will have like an inch of varnish in the bottom from gas that sat in there for 10 years. And, so that was my big summer project. I tore the gas tank out and all the fuel lines and fuel filter and new fuel pump and replaced all of that. The brakes have gone through. We've replaced every brake line on it. So that's ready to go. And now we just have to take care of the cooling system, roll cage, race seat, and, the other safety gear that it needs, and it should be good to go.
Well, best of luck to you in the racing season. Hopefully you guys get out there.
Yeah, the toughest one is like the first one, right? Because you have to have everything together. After that, it's just, repairing whatever you broke the first race, in time for the second race, in time to the third. So I would hope that we could get maybe 2 races this year. I think would be nice. 3 would be awesome. But at the same time, all the other guys on the team, one guy just had he and his wife just had a baby. The other guy just bought a house. So there's all these things. Life gets in the way of these kind of projects, and that adds to our whole our delay on getting the car on track. Personally, if it was up to me, I think we should all just quit our jobs and just do full time Lemons racing.
So how many races do they have at Pitt in a year for Lemons?
They just have one Lemons race. They also have a Champ Car race there. They have a full schedule of other stuff. So generally, Lemons only appears at the same track once per year, but there are a few that get doubles, like Gingerman in Michigan. They usually have a spring race and a fall race there. Um, and things are different this year. Obviously, the COVID-19 thing screwed up the whole schedule last year. A lot of races were canceled. And then when they finally did get things going, there were protocols put in place, for social distancing and things like that, where, the normal kind of like, normally the schedule is you race all day on Saturday. You kind of, have a big pit party on Saturday night, and then Sunday you run the second half of the event. Um, well, they kind of, had to take away the pit parties and things. So it wasn't quite the same. It was a successful year. But over half the schedule got canceled because of COVID, and as a result, a lot of the tracks that host Lemons, when they went to rebook for this year, well, a lot of the other events that they host were all trying to, scramble for dates as well. So they had to move to a few new places. So like, there's some new tracks on the schedule this year that haven't been there before, like the National Corvette Museum in Bowling Green. That track's on there, which hasn't been in a few seasons. A few places that they normally go to, like South Carolina Motorsports Park, isn't on the schedule. But Sebring in Florida is this year. So yeah, there's some surprises. So it should be interesting. It's going to be a fun year to watch.
So that Sebring race should be bumpy.
Yeah, but in a $500 car, it's not really that much different than a normal track.
Yeah, that's true. Might rattle them to bits, but maybe a normal track does that too.
There will be rust falling off a lot of them.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, well, that's a clean track.
I mean, even when those brooms out there.
So I guess then take us to eventually you grow past your first car and you go to college, like you said in your Blazer, and then you met the great Chris Wolfson. How'd you guys meet at college? Are you guys both going for the same thing?
No, actually, we were different majors altogether, and I probably wouldn't have otherwise, known him, except that we both raced RC cars. And there was a local hobby shop right near our college, and we went to Slippery Rock University, and in Slippery Rock, Pennsylvania, and Butler, Pennsylvania, right down the road was a place called Wagon Hill Hobbies, and you know, Chris and I had actually crossed paths several times racing RC cars in the past. So I kind of knew him. He kind of knew me. And then when we started going to the same place every week, you're like, hey, wait, I know you. And, we kind of put two and two together and realized we were both going to school, and, another mutual friend of ours. So we kind of like carpool to the races or whatever once in a while, and started going to some bigger races together. And but yeah, that's how we started hanging out on campus, and that's how that all happened.
So to give context to this, Chris Wolfson, the brother of Ben Wolfson, Ben we had earlier on the podcast a few episodes ago. Chris is kind of the team principal, if you will, of Western PA Iracing. Um, does the team sheets, a lot of the setup work, stuff like that, and is that's kind of what brought Western PA Iracing is kind of what brought all of us together in the group on iRacing. And so going from like, what did you and have? Did Chris have anything to do with you getting into iRacing?
Yeah, Chris is solely responsible for that. So you can totally blame him for this. Uh, Basically, Chris has been trying to get me to iRace for years, and I was never opposed to it. I just kind of didn't have uh, the time to put a rig together and actually get involved with it. So last April, um, you know, when all of the real Lemons races got canceled because of COVID, and we all went into lockdown, the 24 Hours of Lemons decided, you know what, we're going to do some virtual racing on iRacing. We're going to see if we can get our crew online, and they set up a broadcast, and they set up the a bunch of races, and it looked ridiculously fun. And Chris started running in the league, and he's like, look, you have to do this. Here is a steering wheel, here are some pedals, sign up, and you're going to be in the next race. So he came over to my house and dropped all the stuff off, and it took me about a week to kind of get my computer up and running, and my monitor situation set up and everything. But yeah, if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be iRacing at all. But I started last April, and I was absolutely terrible, as everybody is when they start. But I've gotten slightly better. I can get the car around the track without wrecking into a bunch of people now. So I guess that's step number one.
Is it safe to say that that you're addicted and/or here to stay on iRacing for a bit?
Oh, I'm definitely going to stay. I wouldn't necessarily, I'm not one of those people that's playing 8 hours a day like some people Frank. But I I I definitely like it. I enjoy it. I especially like the Lemons iRaces. They've managed to put something together which really kind of mimics what the real Lemons experience might be like, and the fact that it's not too serious. It's a fantastic place to kind of get in, no matter what your skill level. You can just kind of laugh at the absurdity of the whole thing and have a good night.
One thing I really like too that you guys do in those races, and I don't know if it's maybe take is you guys have like some really kick-ass paint schemes.
Well, that's like the whole idea. Like when you race in Lemons, one of the things that they do in real Lemons racing is you go through what's called BS inspection. Okay, so you go through tech inspection. They make sure your cage and your fire and your brakes and all that stuff are fine. And then you go through BS inspection, and that is where they seat you in your class, A, B, or C. A's are the fastest cars, B's are mid range, and C are like the slow cars. And the way that their payouts are is actually, if you win C class, you win more money than A class. They actually want to promote the slow cars, right? And the ridiculous cars. So one of the ways that you could bump yourself down, say you have a B class car, if you want to end up in C class, you can do things like you can bribe the judges. You can, and they want you to do ridiculous things like have a theme. And a lot of times your team will show up in costume. The car will be painted a certain theme. And then, so it's a whole thing. And that's kind of translated over into the iRacing thing is, all these, these guys find these ridiculous themes every week. And, they just go into Photoshop and they paint their cars up to, yeah, if you're not a normal Lemons guy and you watch one of the races, you would probably have like your mind would be blown. Like, what are these guys doing? But it makes perfect sense if you're a normal Lemons racer.
Yeah, because you guys have done some, like you guys had a Crystal Pepsi car one race. You guys did a tribute to the Christmas story. Ralphie, you'll shoot your eye out.
Yeah, that was our Christmas theme for that week. Yeah. So it could be anything. I think we had a Polyshore Biodome car at one point. You just find some obscure pop culture reference, or maybe some type of current event that's going on. It could be anything from an obscure musical group, whatever, and you just theme your car like that's the sponsor, right? And it there's a ton of inside jokes on a lot of people's paint schemes. You kind of have to watch the broadcast, which is either on YouTube or on Facebook on the 24 Hours of Lemons Facebook page. But yeah, the guys who do the broadcast always like to create a bunch of inside jokes, and those usually end up on the cars at some point.
Now, I've watched a few of these races, and it looks like it's usually like multi-class, but the classes are not the cars you'd expect to race against each other. Is it always like that, where they put like some really... Is that like the format? Graze over that, how iRacing Lemons race works.
When it started, what they did is they went through all the cars that iRacing offered that kind of mimicked what might be in an actual Lemons race. So you had Miatas, you had the Pontiac Solstice, you had the Jetta TDI, um, you had the street stock Camaro, the Mustang. Like these are all cars that in some form or another might be in an actual 24 hours of Lemons race. So what they did is they took all those, they put us all on track at the same time. We were all terrible, and it was funny because we were all wrecking into each other. Not intentionally. We were just terrible iRacers, and that provided 2 hours of entertainment. Well, as this progressed, and as we got did more and more races, we were doing this every week, and since April. Well, unfortunately, we all got kind of good at iRacing. So if they would have kept that same sort of format, it would just look like a normal race now on a broadcast. It would be, you know, competitive lap times and clean racing, and who wants to watch that? So what they did is they for between the A, B, and C classes, they just took really ridiculous cars with ridiculous disparities. So it's not uncommon that you'll have Miatas and Jettas in one class, and then you'll have 87 NASCARs in another class, or a Lotus 49. So like a really high speed rocket ship of a car with terrible handling. And it's coming up on, a Pontiac Solstice, which is one of the slowest cars in iRacing. And it just, the chaos is created that way. Um, so it makes the whole racing experience, when you're actually in a race, depending on what car you're in, you're either looking three cars ahead of you, or you're looking in your rearview mirror the whole time, waiting for an '87 Monte Carlo to come smashing through your back bumper.
And then a lot of these are multi-driver too, so you drive with Chris in a lot of these, right?
Right. The way that they have the schedule set up is every 2 weeks is what they call Sundoro, because it's a Sunday night enduro, and it's a 2 hour race with an hour of practice ahead of time. And that's where I pair up with Chris, and we'll usually, pick a car that suits both of us well. And, yeah, so that's just like a normal endurance racing. People try to keep it as clean as possible. But again, they do these kind of like ridiculous, car pairings and things like that to kind of keep the whole thing interesting. And then every other week they do what's called trash racing. So they will pick a track with inappropriate cars on it. So it may be a dirt oval with Kia Optimas. It may be that since they put the jump in at Irwindale and the figure eight, that's become a popular thing. So we'll run like open wheel cars on the jump class, or on the jump at Irwindale. Um, they're very creative in trying to find the absolute greatest train wreck possible within iRacing's limits.
Very interesting for sure. I can imagine in those open wheel cars, you kinda just land it once off the jump in your toast, or do they keep going?
It sort of depends on the car. Some of them are better than others. Like some don't land correctly. Other ones, you can actually count the number of times you can land it before it breaks. They actually, before they set up a race, they will go in and do extensive testing to make sure that they're not picking something that is just going to be a terrible time. So they find a nice balance of cars that work, but not too well, if
Right,
that makes
just
sense.
just shitty enough.
Right. Like it actually takes, if you have the skill, you can make it work. Um, and that's how they set up all the trash racing, which is fantastic. The guys who do it, probably the guys who run the league probably don't get enough credit for being as deviant as they are.
So has this kind of fun racing in Lemons led you to racing anything else in iRacing? Is there any official series that you're into?
Yeah, if you're on an official race, there's a good chance you'll see me down in like either the Mazda races, the MX5 Cup races, or I run um, what is it, the Sim League with that has the Jettas and Mazdas and and Mustangs. I run those races quite a bit. I run the touring car with the Audi A3. That's another one of my favorites. I haven't done a lot of circle track stuff yet. I think that's probably going to be my next, start to, dip my toe in that a little bit more.
Are you still a rookie in that?
I think I actually have my D license. I ran enough of the street stock circle track stuff to get my D license.
Amateur, semi-professional.
I'm a semi-professional no matter what I'm doing.
I got you. All this stuff is pretty fun. We've been doing some practicing for the Iracing Daytona 24. You've talked about jumping in there. Do you think you're going to do that race?
I'm gonna see. I may actually hop into your practice tomorrow night for a bit. I run on a Monday night league that kind of runs opposite of your practice times for that. So I think I may come in early and then bounce out and go to my Monday night league. But yeah, I'm gonna give it a whirl, and if I'm not totally terrible at it, I'll join you for 24 hours of Daytona.
Yeah, it'd be cool to have you in the All-Star car.
Yes.
I'm gonna play that Smash Mouth song the entire time driving.
Oh boy.
Oh, I would live for that.
So what is your Monday Night League?
So there is another podcast. I'll give them a plug called Everyone Racers, and they are a podcast that you can find them in all the different streaming services and on YouTube. And they are a podcast that deals specifically with grass sports, motorsport racing, and 24 Hours of Lemons, and Champ Car, and all those different series. So they talk about building your car and safety gear and driving tips, and the different iRacing leagues that we do. They mention those, and they're a funny crew. There's 4 of them. They've been doing the show for a couple of years now, and it's a good listen. So if you're looking for a podcast to check out, it's Everyone Racers. You can find them on YouTube and stuff like that. But they host an iRacing league on Monday nights. And the fun part about their league is they don't tell you ahead of time what track or what car. Like, you literally load into the session and it's like, oh, we're racing Kias at Road Atlanta tonight. Cool. So you just never know what's going to pop up, and it kind of keeps everybody on the same level.
That's called a 3-pedal Mafia, right?
Yeah, that is the Lemons team is 3-pedal Mafia,
I
and
understand.
Everyone Racers is their podcast. Yeah, but if you know anything about the Lemons group, 3-pedal Mafia is a team that's been around for a number of years, and they had some success. They're all pretty good drivers, and they're instructors for a lot of different SCCA events, and as a matter of fact, one of the guys, if you guys are familiar with Extreme Experience, which is the you can buy a seat in a supercar and go do a couple laps, those things that go all around the country. One of the guys in there is one of the instructors with them for a couple of different tracks that they go to. So
very cool.
But if you guys have never done Extreme Experience, and if you've never been on a track and you want to give it a whirl, I would highly suggest Extreme Experience is a great way to kind of like dip your toe in. Not only do you get to drive an awesome car, but they have really good instructors, and it is, it's very short. You go out and you're just starting to get into it, and your drive's over because they give you like 3 laps. But I think it's a great event to see if, like, do I want to do this or don't I want to do this? I think that is it's a good, let's call it a gateway event, right?
Well, and I know Gingerman Raceway here in Michigan does do that Extreme Experience.
Yeah, I would suggest it. I did it in a Porsche 911 GT3, and it was absolutely fantastic. I mean, you can get it, in-car video of it and the whole thing while you're there, and just going 140 miles per hour down a straightaway in a Porsche. That just there's nothing not fun about that.
Right. Well, so Al, before we let you go, I got a couple of quick hitters, and we'll see if Austin wants to touch on any questions before we send you out. Um, any like bucket list race that you? Well, first, is there any cool races that you've been to? And then, are there any that you'd like to go to?
Well, I've gone to 24 Hours of Daytona the past couple of years as a spectator, and it is fantastic. I would highly recommend getting the pit pass, and spending the whole weekend there. It's just that is a gearhead bucket list thing for sure. Um, I've gone to a NASCAR race. I've done one. I went to Charlotte a couple of years back. That's a fantastic track to go to. I had a great time there. And I'm also into rally racing. That's one of the things you didn't really touch on. I have a friend who has a car put together, and I used to crew for him until expenses for rally racing kind of got out of hand a little bit. It's kind of hard to do that on a grassroots level now, but you can still do rallycross events and things like that. So I'm kind of into that. But I've gone to there's a rally race here in Pennsylvania called Susquehanna Trail Pro Rally. It's STPR, and it's held in north central Pennsylvania. Used to be every June, and they've changed the schedule. I think they moved it to the fall now. But that's a fantastic event to go to if you've never checked out rally racing before. American rally racing, not quite on the same level as WRC or anything like that, but we do have some really talented drivers here, and you'll see guys like Travis Pastrana or Ken Block show up to the races there once in a while, and that's kind of cool to see them.
Oh wow, yeah, I totally forgot about the whole rally thing. We'll have to have you on a second time and at some point and touch more on that.
Do you really think people want to hear me a second time, Kenny?
Well, we'll
Al, we run the show. We're the captains.
Yeah. But there's probably people in the comment section right now that are like, "Shut this guy up."
Well, what we'll do is we'll space them out so that they'll forget who you are by the time we have you on a second time.
I'll just change. I'll be Dale Jones the next time I'm on.
Yeah.
These people don't know what they're missing, okay? When you leave us.
I suppose.
So yeah, did we ever answer that question of like any race you'd like to go to?
Oh, a race I would like to go to. Honestly, I would love to go to a WRC race like Rally Finland or just one of the big European races. I think that would be so cool. Obviously that's a giant bucket list thing. Hoping we could ever travel internationally again is a big wish list, but yeah, I would definitely like to check out a WRC event in real life. I dig Baja racing. I think I would like to check out Baja 1000 in Mexico at some point as a spectator. I think that would be kind of fun. I'd like to maybe see some of those famous kind of like West Coast tracks before they're not there anymore. Sears Point or WeatherTech Raceway or whatever they call it now is one of those that every year it seems like they get threatened more and more to close down just because of noise ordinances and things like that. And I'd hate to like Laguna Seca and places like that. I would really like to see before they're not there anymore.
Another question we like to always ask people is if you could be a professional driver in anything, is there any particular series that you'd like above the rest?
I that's a tough question because in a way they're all kind of cool.
Oh yeah.
Obviously if you're a NASCAR driver, that's like where all the eyes are as far as the American side of things. But internationally, who wouldn't want to be an F1 driver?
Well, I'm almost thinking more of if you take out the fame, fortune, and notoriety, and it's just like the joy of driving the cars and the racing.
Honestly, I would just like to be a really good Lemons driver. Like I'm totally content with that in my point in life. I just like to get better at what I'm already doing. Obviously, it would be kind of cool to maybe, you know, you daydream about, oh wow, wouldn't it be great to be like an IMSA racer or something? Because that's kind of like the next progression as far as endurance racing goes, right? Like um, coming from an amateur rank to pro or semi-pro kind of uh, sort of step like that. But um, yeah, I'm happy, you know, with at this point of just getting out and doing my own thing, and I don't, I don't necessarily think I have to um, have any grand delusions of ever of ever doing anything more at this point.
I gotcha. What's your, I guess, your favorite car on the iRacing service?
Man. Well, it's going to sound funny, but it's just because I've had the most success driving the TDI Jetta. Um, I've, probably have more wins in that car than anything else. So I would say that that's probably one of my favorites. But another that I just started driving is the Lotus 49, which if you haven't had a chance to drive that car yet, um, it's like a death trap. It's fantastic. Like I didn't think it would be possible to actually like feel fear through a video game, but that car will do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I wanted to go back to the Rallycross thing, the World Rallycross thing, real quick. Do you actually like follow WRC? I do occasionally,
You know
kind
what?
of off and on.
It's difficult unless you subscribe to their streaming service because there's just nothing from on a broadcast level like it doesn't exist. It's hard to follow coverage. So I subscribed to their service like a couple years back and it was great. But then I found, because of the time difference and stuff, it's kind of hard to follow along. So it wasn't really worth it for me to subscribe again. I just kind of, there's a bunch of Twitter accounts and YouTube accounts, and I'll watch follow ups on a lot of that stuff rather than watch it in real time.
Yeah, I know that like FIA WRC has a YouTube channel that they post a lot of their stuff on, but like a year or two ago, like it was on and it was open, but then all of a sudden it became like blocked in our country. Something to do with um, it being streamed foreign.
Well, but that was one of the things they put it behind a paywall.
Right.
So, they wanted us all to subscribe to the service. So that's we can't have nice things for free anymore.
Yeah. But then like I remember like earlier this year it was like not blocked again. And I don't know if that was because of pandemic, like they made it free for a little while on YouTube or what. I haven't watched it recently, but I did start watching the 2020 season and I was able to do that on YouTube. Um, like I said, I'm kind of in and out of it. Do you have like a favorite driver?
Of all time, it was Colin McRae by far. Now it's honestly, I kind of go. Most of my favorite guys have all kind of retired. It's like I haven't really adopted a new favorite driver. I just kind of watch and enjoy. Um, but like Peter Salsquist was a guy that I admired quite a bit. Um, you know, uh, I would say that even WRC has kind of fallen victim to what we talked about way back at the beginning of how the cars themselves kind of probably aren't as interesting as they were, years ago. There's very few manufacturers that are actively involved in WRC at this point, and it's mostly like foreign manufacturers who their cars don't even get sold in this country. So it makes it kind of hard to have a rooting interest when like a Citroen is your one of the lead manufacturers.
And to be honest, though, I think not having a favorite driver really helps you focus on the sport as a whole. You know, like after Jeff Gordon left in NASCAR, I was kind of left with like, who do I want to root for now? And I just spent like the first half of the 16th season, like, see who wins today. I'll obviously pull for some people more than others, but I think it also helps you too.
You know what? And I like racing in general that there's some parity as far as, who's going to win each week, right? Like it's nice to not know. And
Yes.
it's nice when there's that. One of the things that one of the series I think is totally underrated is British touring car racing.
Oh,
Uh,
yes. I love the BTCC.
it is so great because you have, not only do you have, what they must have like 9 manufacturers involved in that series. You have all the Japanese stuff, you have the Germans and the Koreans, and they all have cars involved. And they're all similar power. It's momentum racing where, they have to carry corner speed, so they're just not lifting. They're going off the track. There's grass flying everywhere. It's fantastic. There's like 3 hold my beer moments per lap. Um, and yeah, they're just it's really entertaining racing. The cars look like, you know, I know that they're not, but they look very similar to what you could go into a showroom and buy. So it has that kind of appeal to it. If like you're a Honda guy, or if you're a BMW guy or whatever, your car's out there on the track, and it's I wish we had something that sort of emulated that a little bit closer here in the States.
Yeah, and then, like their format is brilliant too because you got race 1 is from timed qualifying, race 2 is the results from race 1, and then race 3 is actually an invert of some of the results from race 2, but you don't know how many cars are going to get inverted. It's anywhere from like, I don't know, 6 to like 10 or 12 or something. So there's not like an invert spot to for any cars to shoot for in race 2. And so you got the fast guys coming to the front, but like the slow guys are not that slow. It's a pretty tight field, so you get a lot of different winners. A lot of the circuits they go to are brilliant. You get a lot of racing in the rain because it's over in England and Scotland and there. Um, I've been following BTCC for about 11 years now, and yeah, it's one of my favorite series.
Yeah, I'm relatively new to it, and it's just one of those things where I've kind of stumbled upon where I could see the coverage at a regular basis thanks to streaming. And they do have it on NBC Sports Network, shows like kind of like race delay, I don't know, tape delayed races. And it's really a fun series. It has an energy to it that I think is missing from a lot of different formats of racing. And yeah, I'm just a big fan of it.
And they used to be kind of dominated by factory teams, and now there's only like, I don't know. I know there's 2, possibly 3 like factory teams. The rest are actually all independents, which is great to see because there's still like around 25 cars every week um, going out there racing, and you have no idea who's going to win.
I would honestly say, like, if you take the top 17 cars in one of those races, any one of them could win it. It is
Yeah,
you see it all the time, and you just don't see that in other forms of racing.
yeah, and yet it's not a spec series. I mean, granted, the specs are probably really similar, but the cars look very different. You got Honda Civics, you got Vauxhalls, you got the little Hyundais, um, you got BMWs. You also have front wheel drive and rear wheel drive competing in the same class.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, yeah, and you get the, like you said, you have the independent shops, like what is it, Gazoo Racing or whatever, Kazoo
Which
Racing,
is a Toyota.
the Toyotas. Um, yeah, it's interesting on a lot of different levels. And I don't necessarily, I think when you have all that going on, it kind of takes away from being driver centric, really. Like you don't have that, there isn't really a Lewis Hamilton in that series because, you know, eh, so many different people can win, and you can like, if you have a guy, there's a good chance, he might win that week, no matter who he is. And I mean, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'll definitely be looking forward to the next BTCC season. Um,
There we go. Let's plan a trip to a BTCC race.
oh
Like,
man, I
let's.
think what's I mean, obviously everybody likes Brands Hatch. I don't want to go to Silverstone just because that's where everybody would want to go to. I think the track that I like that people don't really know would be Thruxton. I absolutely love that track. How fast it is.
The other thing too is you got to pick a place that's actually good for spectators when it comes to road racing in particular. As you go to a couple different tracks and stuff, you definitely find out some places are better than others. So I would hate to go all the way to England or the UK to go watch a race, and then you're just sitting in some like sheep pasture, a half mile from the track and can't see anything.
Yeah, or
Yeah.
you see him once a lap, and it's like a split second, like, wow, that was awesome.
Yeah, exactly. You're on a straightaway where you don't actually see anything happen. So that yeah, we'd probably if I did something like that, I would have to investigate and pick and search and see what a good spectator track is.
Yeah, probably also try pick two races that are close enough to each other, two race weekends, so you can just stay there. Because I think the most expensive part is gonna be the plane tickets.
Absolutely.
That's the thing too. I'm not sure exactly where all the circuits are on a map for BTCC, but with the UK being not that big, you could probably go to multiple race weekends. The only bad thing is that they space their race weekends out. They don't usually go back to back. They did this past season because of the pandemic and a weird schedule, but normally they're pretty spaced out between races.
You may be able to time it too, where you could catch something else other than BTCC while you're there. Like you could,
Well,
you
yeah, I
know,
know they have like Ginettas, then they have like I think they have like the Renault Clio Cup that are like companion events. And I think occasionally there'll be companions with like British GT3 as well.
and that's another. Speaking of GT3, is the German touring car, the DTM or whatever. They're making a bunch of changes to their format next year, and that's going to be very much like GT racing.
Well, Austin, you got anything else for Al?
I don't think so. Thank you for coming on today, Al.
Hey, thanks for having me. I
Yeah,
can't believe it's been an hour already.
yeah.
I
I
can't believe people listen to me for an hour.
well, it's very few, if that makes you feel any better.
It does. I'm relieved. I'm
So,
hoping I'm hoping they're just incapable of changing to something else.
they, they've all fallen asleep.
They're all asleep, or maybe they don't have arms.
yeah, I think I there's honestly more stuff I'd like to get to at some point. We'll have to have you back on. I'd really love to go maybe more in depth with your Lemons team, and with the um, the rallying, and hopefully get an update on where you're at on those things, and also on the iRacing side. It'll be interesting to see like being able to talk about after the Daytona 24 hour if we end up doing that. And I'd like to follow along with you on the real racing seasons like BTCC, and come back and chat with you about those things.
I would, we did cover a wide band of topics. So yeah, I would like to kind of focus down on something and maybe get a little bit more specific. And not, then again, I'd probably just run out of things to say if we only stuck to one topic. So this is probably better to do it this way.
Yeah, we can narrow it down too. And of course, I mean, as the guests, it's whatever the guests want to do. If you want to come on here and ramble and tell stories and just talk about random stuff for a half hour, 1 hour, it's whatever you want.
Good to know. I'll start putting some away to save just for the next time. Next time I'm on.
Well, the idea is to showcase the people that we enjoy the company of and are interested to hear from. So yeah,
Well, continued success in your podcasting careers, gentlemen. I enjoyed this.
thank you.
Yeah, it was nice having you on. We'll definitely be chatting with you. Look forward to practicing with you tomorrow, and it's always great to chat with you, hang out with you. Um, you're one of the guys. Again, iRacing brought us to guys like you, and we're thankful for that. And um, Just
Well, I'm glad.
interesting.
Likewise, I'm glad I got involved because particularly this past year, with like the lockdowns and things like that. This, the Discord and iRacing, it's been a great way to remain social and even though we're not necessarily hanging out in the same room, it's nice to have conversations and be able to talk about this stuff and kind of feel normal, despite the fact that our our race schedules and lives have been kind of altered this past year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can really assume that you would have been twiddling your thumbs a lot. I think many of us would be if it weren't for Discord and being able to, I guess, talk to other people.
No, no, it's definitely helped me, maintain my sanity. Even though I probably sound insane half the time, but
Well, and it's great too being able to chat with a group of guys that doesn't think you're weird for liking racing. You know.
that's true. If you're just hanging out at work and I work for kind of like a tech company, and if I probably mention this kind of stuff, they'd look at me sideways. So it's nice to have my hive-minded people that I can meet up with a couple times a week and enjoy racing virtually with.
For sure. All right, Al. Well, we'll definitely talk to you later. You're free to disconnect, and we'll for sure have you on again.
Sounds good, guys. I just hope that your listeners can grow arms for the next time.
We'll we'll see.
I can hit the disconnect
Fingers
button.
crossed. Yep.
All right. Later on, guys. Bye.
See ya.
Thank you so much, Al. Bye bye. So that was the great Al Jones. So I think that was fantastic. One of the best guests we've had on. The width of topics we talked about was huge.
Yeah, I mean he's a talker, and that falls in perfectly with the podcast. And I liked Al's perspective too. We don't have any real other friends that are in Lemons, and Lemons is a really different form of racing. And I like that we've been able to branch out to these different guests that have all had a really different perspective or a different are in racing in a different form. Um, so that was cool, and I actually want to have Al on relatively soon again because of this is kind of fresh in our mind, and he has a lot of other things that he can talk about with rallying and everything. And he brings a lot of content to the table. I enjoyed having him on.
Yeah, even too. I mean, on the same note, people don't have to be talkers necessarily for it to be good. It's nice to just kind of like let them talk and have their soapbox moment for stuff, so people can learn more about them. But I mean, we can always ask questions to different people. I know there's a lot of people we want to have on because we have a lot of questions we'd like to ask to get to know them more, and just it's nice to talk with those people to sort of give them their limelight for a while.
Yeah, I mean a lot of these. I mean every guest we've had, it's I've learned about the people we're talking to, which is interesting. Um, they've all brought something that we don't know about them, and Al's one of those that we didn't really know a whole lot, just kind of the basics. So it was nice to be able to dive in and expand on that more, and I think we can expand on that further in the future with him.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess you know, Al did a great job. We'll go on to video games now. Kenny, you've been playing a couple different ones.
Yeah, so I actually have something to talk about on the video game side for once. Got back into a game called Code Vein with my roommate Justin. He had me get the game a while back, and we kind of went into it, got out of it. Now we're kind of getting back into it again. I don't know if you're familiar with the Dark Souls series. It's kind of like that, but a little more like anime. I'm not a huge anime fan, but I was a little more into like the combat and stuff. Um, but kind of challenging. But Justin's already beat the game, so now he's kind of bringing me through it, and it's been fun. We're just kind of trying to beat it so I can. Really, to be honest with you, I'm trying to beat it so I can uninstall it and never have to have it on my hard drive again. But I just have a list of games I haven't finished. I just want to get the stories over with. The other one, I actually just downloaded it yesterday, was the Jackbox games. I downloaded the most recent set, which I think is number 7, which is like they're like social games, like where you download or while you go again to a website on your phone and you play the game from your phones, and you have a group of people playing, and you have it's like you just basically try to be funny. Like there's one game where you get these prompts, they're questions, and um, it's like you know, I don't know, three things you would never want to say to this person, or some like just weird things, and you just try to make them as funny as possible, and then you vote on who's the funniest. And it's great. I mean, I played it with my friend Brody and then Justin, my roommate, for Brody's birthday, and uh, it's a heck of a time. It's more fun with more people. We had the bare minimum amount of people, three. You can have as many as like eight. So we hope to have a bigger group at some point, but they're they're funny if you have the right friend group to play with who all have a good sense of humor.
Yeah, I feel like that's really what I mean, some of those, I mean, sometimes, um, they'll kinda help you out, with the different, like, starters, or recommendations, themes, I guess, prompts, but it really does help a lot to have people that have a good sense of humor, and especially one that's very similar to yours.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you don't play with a group, like if you play with people you either don't know or like a group that you know doesn't have like a similar sense of humor as you, it could actually be like awkward. But Justin, Brody, and I have known each other for so long, and we have a very similar sense of humor, so uh, it's a lot of fun. It's kind of like a Cards Against Humanity feel if you've played that game, where you get prompts, and but the only difference here is you actually come up with the answers instead of having the answers in your hand. Um, but yeah, it was pretty fun. I'm glad I downloaded it yesterday.
So then, the only video games I've been playing is, played, No Man's Sky. It, that's okay, just kinda seems weird, I guess. Got back into modded Minecraft for a week or so over break. Got back out of it because work and just there's not enough time in the day to do that. And you don't want to do it every day for a while because it'll get old. Been playing some Lego Incredibles just because I want to see what that game is like. Most of them are kind of fun, sort of neat to like. Doesn't require a whole lot of brain power, so you just gotta play through them. And they're still pretty fun, I guess.
Yeah, that No Man's Sky when it got really hyped up when it was first came out, and then it was kind of a flop. But I've heard that it's gotten quite a bit of improvements. I mean, it's been out for geez a few years now, so I I I've actually heard some decent things about it more recently, and I
I
was
mean, it's better, like, there's a story that goes along with it. I haven't heard any good or bad stuff about the story. For me, it's just not very, enticing to keep following it because it's just kinda like, I don't know why I would do any of this. I don't really give 2 shits about, some dude that needs my help and, like, he's 5 light years away or something, like, like, "Not my fault you're stupid and crashed," or something, you know what I mean?
like, good
Like
luck, buddy.
right, like, you're not a real person, so I I don't care.
Oh, another thing I did get back into over the last week. We played like 1 or 2 days. Gears 5. Brody and I downloaded it like a long time ago when it was like new, and we started playing through the story co-op, and we got out of it probably about I don't know a third of the way through the story, and then now we just recently started playing it again. Um, it it I've never been a Gears fan. I don't really care for the control scheme and everything because it's like third person with a weird control scheme. And it feels different than other shooters, but it's got a pretty captivating story. So we kind of got started playing that again, trying to finish that up and get that out of my list of games to play. But so yeah, it's a few things to talk about in the video games aspect. Um, and I know, Austin, you have the lone. Well, I may be able to chime in a little bit, but you brought up the rant and review for this week.
Yeah, so less of a rant, I guess, more just a review. Building Speed, The Science of Fast. They released a 2020 NASCAR by the numbers. in terms of the drivers. So these guys are basically just looking at like the accidents and the spins, just sort of interesting stuff. Maybe we can put this in the link on a YouTube video in the description. But John Hernimacek had the most accidents and spins. Interestingly enough, you're kind of not surprised he's high on the list, but last year he was first. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Um, apparently, he used to be the most accident-prone driver. This year, he's only sixth on the list, and Matt Kenseth and Ryan Newman, despite the fact that they missed some races, they're actually third and second, respectively.
Yeah, Matt had a tough year. When he came back at Darlington and got sixth place, I was like, hell yeah, this is Matt's gonna do awesome in this car, and then it just never really formulated after that. I think he might have gotten a few top tens after that, but that was like it, and I was like, dang it, man. I was rooting for him so much, to do well.
Yeah, it really didn't help that he'd been out of the car for so long, and this rules package was so new,
Right, no
and he didn't have
practice.
any practice. And it would be one thing if Matt was working with Chad Johnston, who's Kyle Larson's crew chief, like the year before or even earlier in the year when they had practiced, so he could really know like Matt likes his car set up this way or different things to find speed with Matt. And they didn't really have that. So I think it was just kind of a fluke that he did so well at Darlington, and it is more of a driver's track, and he's pretty experienced at that. I expected he'd do a lot better personally because he was really still not on the top of his game, but he was really competitive up until he got, in my opinion, wrongly taken out of the 20 car.
Yeah.
Because I mean, he won at Phoenix, and he really should have had a chance to go on and win the championship at Homestead. But it's just a shame NASCAR is that stupid, broken vehicle policy where had too many people over the wall because his guys couldn't count. And if you look at it, one of the guys didn't even touch the car. He just went over the wall and went, "Oh shit, I'm the seventh guy," and then sat back on the wall. So yeah, NASCAR's really got to fix some stuff.
Yeah, I was glad to see, the kind of quote unquote end of his career. He did grab that win at Phoenix, and despite not being able to go for a championship and being taken out of the 20 car, at least he was able to get a win at the end of his career, which like a lot of drivers don't do. We've seen Jeff Gordon win at the end of his main career. Dale Jr. I believe won at the end of his last year, if I remember
Uh,
correctly.
Dale
Was it?
Jr. didn't. He was on like a 2 or 3 season dry spell,
Wasn't
but Tony Stewart did.
Dwayne Stewart did? Yes. So that doesn't always happen. So it was nice to at least see that. Um, it was cool to see him on the track. Cool to see the 42 car still out there. But yeah, I'm kind of with you where even though the odds were kind of against him and everything, I kind of did have higher expectations for him in that car. At the beginning of season two, going to like the Ryan Newman thing, I kind of had decent expectations for the Roush group because the Fords were pretty strong. And last season, Newman didn't do half bad in the six car. And obviously, he had his wreck at Daytona and all that jazz. That didn't help matters, obviously. But coming back, him and Chris Buescher they didn't really set the world on fire. Not that I expected them to be fantastic, but I thought they'd at least build upon what they had going, and they really didn't.
Yeah, it's hard to remember it too because Ryan Newman was pretty quiet the entirety of 2019, and then he made the chase, and I believe he made it to the round of 12,
Yes.
just by happenstance and luck on his part and unluckiness on other drivers' part. Not to discredit him and his abilities, but this year, of course, he missed the first couple races of the season after Daytona, so he really didn't have the opportunity to make it to the chase unless he won. And let's face it, he definitely doesn't have the car to win. Um, I'm sure he has the skill set to win if you put him in a good car, but not like set the world on fire. He'd probably get like it. He's probably Eric Almirola talent level by now, with just his age and stuff. So if you put him in Stewart Haas' car, I would expect him to do what Eric did.
I just really thought that like I thought the pairing between him and Chris Buescher was gonna be a good one. Um, I've always liked Chris Buescher. I think he's a solid driver. I think he doesn't tear stuff up. He keeps his cool. Uh, I thought that those two guys were going to be able to help each other uh, progress that team, and just hasn't happened yet. Who knows? With this year, I think could be potentially unpredictable. 2022 with the next gen car coming out, it's going to be even more unpredictable. We have no idea. I mean, Roush could end up being really good with the next gen. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. I like to be still optimistic. I'm not really a Ford guy, but I do like Ryan Newman. I do like Chris Buescher. I wish them well. It'd be nice to see them get into the playoffs again.
The next thing on there, and we're not going to go through all these. I thought it was interesting though that the free passes by the car number. Chase Elliott, Kyle Busch, and Joey Logano each got only one free pass for the entire season. So that's interesting, and you can see a lot of the people that were in the top 12 spots. Um, the most any one of those got was four. Timmy Hill got the most, if you're curious, with 18 free passes. Um, and only one driver full time did not get a free pass. It was William Byron. So that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I'll make sure to post the link to that in the description for YouTube. Um, but the last segment of the day, we'll go to getting around to it. Sounds like you've made a lot of good modeling progress.
It only sounds like good progress because we haven't done this in like 3 weeks.
Well,
But yeah, I finished the Davy Allison car. It looks pretty all right. I finished the cheap Lego Chinesium car. That thing's ginormous. I showed you the pictures. I mean, it dwarfs a 124 scale car. And if you put a 164 scale car next to it, it looks like it's a 187. So it's absolutely massive.
did you enjoy that build, the Lego car?
I did, yeah, I did. For being the knockoff Legos, and I was surprised too. It's like their own set, because I figured there was a Lego equivalent, and there is one kind of close, but they actually like built their own stuff into it, and it's a completely different, like a standalone set. Doesn't look like a Lego one. It was a pretty good build. It took me like 4 days or something.
I remember. Uh, I remember back when I was a kid, there was like one Lego car I made. It was actually a Lego car. Uh, it was like some open wheel fantasy race car thingy. It was probably like just under the size. Maybe it was about a 1/24th size. Maybe I should get into something like that. It'd be like my intro into modeling because I think the full blown models I think are a little bit above me for now at least. But maybe getting into some Lego stuff might be a nice way to occupy my time.
It could help, yeah, it's a pretty neat hobby. And they do have some like car Lego kits. I know all the Speed Champions and stuff is pretty interesting. Zane actually is pretty into Lego as well.
Yes.
Um, so it's neat. But I think you could totally just get into modeling. Like you just get the basic like get you a black color, a silver or an aluminum color, um, red, orange, yellow, blue, and like you're good. And then at that point, like if you're trying to paint a body to a car, I just go get like Dupli-Color paint. That's all you need.
We'll see. We'll see. It'll be. It's truly a getting around to it.
Yeah, that is a big time getting around to it. And then the next model is a 1992 to 1994 Jeff Gordon car. I bought the set of decals from Mike's. I can build 92 3 or 4 car. I'll probably do 94 because that's when he got his first win. But yeah, excited for that.
Yeah. So in conclusion, that was a great episode. Nice and long episode. Didn't have to worry about time being short on this one. Um, yeah, excited for next week. We're bringing NEPs back with the trucks and the Grand Nationals. Um, BRL will be back yet again. Um, yeah, be another week. We'll try to have another guest on. And let's see, what we're a couple weeks out from the Daytona 24 hour. Yeah, so next, not this weekend coming up, but the next weekend will be Daytona 24 hours on Iracing. That'll be exciting. Um, really, excited to see what Western PA can do with some added drivers to the lineup. Any lasting thoughts from you, Austin?
I don't think so. Just if anybody's watching the podcast from BRL wants to be on here as a guest, we can certainly fit you in the next couple months. Trying to fill out the schedule a bit ahead of time so we know who we're going to have on a couple weeks in advance, just to start getting prepared. And that way, there's like a line of people in case someone can't make it or has to cancel. May or may not be a podcast on the week of the Daytona 24, the iRacing one. Luckily, we're doing the Friday race. So we'll have to miss the BRL stuff on Friday, but we can make it hopefully to the Saturday stuff. But we will likely be tired,
Yeah, may affect the podcast on Sunday. We'll have to see about that. uh,
especially because I don't intend to miss any of the BRL stuff on Saturday, which is like 2.5, 3 hours in and of itself.
oof.
And then we're also probably gonna do like 3 to 4 hours, depending on how many people are in the car. I'm hoping I can be in the All-Star car, just because it's my first race and there should be a lot of people, so it won't be too bad. But in the 412 though, Kenny, if there's only four of you guys, that's like 6 hours.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not opposed to it. I'm not opposed to four guys in that car. But whatever they want to do. It won't be easy, but it's not supposed to be. That's the tough thing, but it's also one of the fun things about the 24-hour races is the challenge that it presents. It's a unique challenge. First one of the year, it'll be fun. That LMP2 car absolutely rips around Daytona. Um, yeah, I'm excited. You guys in the All Star car, you guys have. They always say that car's the more fun car. You guys will have a blast, I'm sure.
I think there's more people, so there's more, jokes to bounce around, and we're not supposed to be the best car on the track, so it kind of gives us some leeway to have a better time. Hopefully, it is a good time.
You guys would be surprised though. Yeah, that orange car still is competitive in whatever split it's in, whether it's an hour, the yellow cars, or in a different split. That car is still competitive. Don't sell you guys or yourselves short.
No, no, for sure. It's just easier to have that good time mentality when you're not too serious or the most serious.
Right. It always gets to the point in the race though. You get so far in, and if you're actually in a decent position, you're well, hell, we might be able to win this thing. And then you start to actually all right, we need to focus, guys.
Yeah, or at least a decent place, like a top 10 or a top 5. Because finishing the race, and I'll say this every time, finishing the race is a challenge in and of itself.
Indeed. Yeah, it really is. And we've been blessed with the 2 years that I've been with Western PA. We've had a lot of success. I couldn't be happier with what we've been able to accomplish. We're basically finishing like every race, and we've gotten 2 wins over the last 2 years, which is fantastic. And hoping to build on that. It's awesome that we keep adding really good and talented drivers who are cool people as well, and it's only going to make us better. So, anyways, I will send us out on that. Thanks to Al again for being our guest this week. Thanks, as always, to Austin for co-hosting with me. We will try our best to come back next week with another podcast episode, with episode number 8, I believe it'll be. So, thanks everybody for watching, and Godspeed.